think would be of value here for anyone that's listening that might be in an organization like this or in a situation like this? And I specifically think I want to hear what you have to say.
Sure.
Because I have forever suffered with and still continue to learn and grow with the too honest gene, the too truth-telling gene, where if I see something, I'm just going to point at it and I'm not going to stop pointing till it's fixed. I think it would be interesting to hear, just from your experience and perspective, how people can approach this within the organization in a more diplomatic, because my way works after you've gone through all of the work and you're on the same team and people don't take things personally, then you have that sort of transparent honesty. But that's not the case for most organizations.
No. And for me, it's that there's no one right way.
Sure.
To me, what is more likely to be effective comes in a couple of flavors.
Okay.
One is cultural sensitivity.
Mm-hmm.
If you work in a really aggressive, defensive, confrontation, like oppositional kind of company where everybody will say anything to anybody anytime.
Yeah.
If you've got lettuce between your teeth, like I could actually reach over, like come and get it out. Like it would be, because culturally that might be okay.
Got it.
In a passive defensive culture, you might be like nudge, or pass them a note, or, I had a friend of mine once in a business situation says, Kirby, I think you may need to blow your nose. And like I had a booger like right out here. Because it's reading the room and knowing what's appropriate. Sure. So when we work with clients, we promote ourselves as being the GYST servers, as it were.
Yeah.
Yet you can't be that all the time.
Yes, of course.
Because then it's like you're typing an email in caps.
Oh, yes. And I know a few people that we've coached down from the ledge of doing that.
Okay. And once you learn the culture of email, you understand that all caps is yelling. Well, the same thing is true in an organization. So you take your approach, which is very authentic, truth-telling, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
In some cultures, let's say even very constructive cultures, that would be frowned upon because it's like, that's not very sensitive. In a passive defensive culture, it would be, oh my God, who's the scary person?
So mean.
Right, you're so mean. But there's a fit, there's a way.
Yeah,
and so
of course.
Then it becomes stylistic about finding the language that is edgy enough to shake them out of the doldrums, but not so much as to be an affront.
So what I'm hearing then, if somebody is in an organization where they're continually moving from crisis to crisis, and somebody has realized, oh my God, there's something we can do about this, and I can see what it is, how are they going to approach it? They're reading the culture, they're reading the language, they're reading the room, all important, I agree. But what's the next step?
Well, for me, now we're getting into like the business of politics, really. I have had to sit senior executives down when, I was reporting up to them. And for me, it's about respecting the appearance of their position.
Right.
So I had to take a fellow heading up one of our very large and financially successful businesses, and this place had some serious issues. Bringing it up in an open meeting with his direct reports there was very likely to not go well, particularly as I was on the other side of the world, and culturally, this was a big no-no.
Yeah.
Asking them if they would give me a tour of the facility or go for a walk, and then very quietly you turn it into I have a way, or I have an insight that can help you be more successful. It's for the organization, but I'm trying to be really sensitive to their ego, to their position, and to the cultural norms that are in place in that place in the world.
Right.
And I find, I found this as a board member, or when I was chair of a board, a few words quietly on the side, I found infinitely more powerful than a PowerPoint presentation that laid out all the naked facts in a boardroom. Because you need to afford the person the opportunity to figure out how they can manage it, given the things that they know and you don't.
Yeah. Yes.
But it's also respecting the reality of work. And
Yeah.
so that would be on that side. But there's the other side. Sensitivity and not going to that place you described every time for everything.
Sure.
I think it's important because then goes back to the parable or the fable about the boy who cried wolf.
Yes, of course.
And then there are times to yell tsunami because there actually is one.
Right.
So 2 weeks ago, I'm on vacation in Newfoundland, Canada, and there was a moose. And it was charging at the path that about 30 of us were on.
Wow.
I tried pointing, and people took out their cell phones.
Oh, geez.
This is a 1,000-pound animal that stops for nothing. And so I finally yelled, "Moose, get the F out of the way because the moose is going to kill us."
Yeah.
So there was a time to be discreet. It's like moose. And then there was a
Yes.
time to go, "Ugh."
Yeah.
But especially as a consultant, if this is consultants watching us, especially as a leader, you have to do that so rarely that it has the effect that you want.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. There's that line, whether you're working on the inside or working from the outside to try and help, that there are some things you're going to see that while may be serious and may lead eventually to the crisis mode. And when we say things like crisis, we're saying a significant market turn, your revenue streams are completely at risk, you have divisions or attrition rates that are through the roof. Like you're unable to sustain the business. It's crisis. But there are ways that you can sort of approach this, and you can sort of see, I know it takes experience, but you can gauge whether or not the subject matter you have time to approach it, or if it's the edge of the cliff and you're about to fall off. And you're right when you say there's a time and a place to raise the flag. It's just how quick and how hard and how active you're raising it. The other piece that I think is indicative of how mature and resilient an organization is how they treat the employees during a crisis. Because I have witnessed some very inappropriate, aggressive, just abusive behavior during a crisis. And then once the crisis had ended, let's just pretend like nothing happened. And there's an entire division of people left looking at each other going, what the hell just happened? Why did we go through this? Yeah. Well, how did it end so abruptly? And why did I just feel like a piece of crap for the last 8 months? And now we're supposed to pretend like nothing happened.
Well, let me give a lovely
you treat people.
So full disclosure, I have family that works for Air Canada. That being said, I have no problem giving them a smack upside the head when they do something wrong. But they're doing something absolutely fantastic. There's all kinds of pilots who are only certified to fly the 737. The only 737s that Air Canada has is the 737 MAX, and they're all sitting on the tarmac at airports across the world. They're paying the pilots.
Okay.
They don't have to.
Okay.
And so here they are. They don't want to.
Because they can't fly, which means they can't work. So technically, okay, that's good.
They could have put them on unemployment insurance, and they didn't.
That's good.
This is like, our pilots in particular are the lifeblood of our company. And just because of a mistake by Boeing, we're not going to pass the crisis on to you. It's giving them a financial hit. But I mean, kudos to Air Canada that in the face of a crisis where they could have taken a couple of choices, they decided to do something like that.
Well, and see, that's the thing. I mean, if you think about the healthcare space that you and I spent a significant amount of time in, I can think of a few projects where it was so difficult that there are business experience scars on a pool of people. And at no point did the organizations involved reach out to offer support, help, counseling, coaching, mentoring, zero. And it's something that I don't think any organization should put their team through. And even if you, at the beginning, people are saying like, no, we're good, you still want to keep top of mind that as you're going through some sort of crisis, it could be a PR crisis, it could be financial, whatever it is, as an organization, if you want to avoid repeating crisis after crisis, then make sure that you take a look at the one you are in at the moment or the one that just passed and learn something from it.
So a couple of things before we wrap up. I actually led a massive evaluation after Hurricane Katrina. A business I worked for had a facility. It happened to be 1 mile the wrong side of the Superdome.
Oh.
And it was devastated by the flooding that came after Hurricane Katrina. When I ran through the analysis of why that event happened and why the consequences of it were so large, you had to go all the way back into the acquisition process and the due diligence that was done.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I looked at that incident, and then I looked at a series of other acquisitions that had been done by the same team, patterns.
Yeah.
And patterns were that certain risks were trivialized, minimized, or just pushed to the side in the rush to get the deal done. And while that one facility was lost to the tune of millions and millions and millions, there was an entire domino string of other facilities that were ripe for the next crisis and the next crisis and the next crisis because there had been a systematic breakdown in a process. And to your point, when a crisis happens, you have to look at that one. Yet, in my experience, you also have to look around at the other things that are similar to see, do we have this same kind of flaw?
What am I missing?
What am I missing? So if Tesla, say, has battery fires in their one car, I would look at the possibility of battery fires in all your other cars too.
Just double check, especially when it's that level of risk. I mean, we're not talking about, I don't know, oh no, the server's going to go down again for half an hour. Like, I mean, genuine, significant risk to self and other, obviously, is first thing. Then you start working your way down the business severity, because we don't want people to think everything is a big risk at all, because you and I have talked about the risk management world and how everyone sort of puts everything through the lens of, oh my God, everything is going to fall apart, right? Again, it's a balance. It varies. It depends.
So to me, the big thing here is really where we started, which is your culture shows its true colors when you're in a crisis.
Yeah.
And those organizations that have resilience, they practice stress inoculation.
Yeah.
They systematically look for risks and try to engineer them out. Are the kinds of organizations that are more likely to have the right answer ready at the right time. In Canada, we had Maple Leaf Foods. There was a listeria incident, and the CEO was on TV that day.
Yeah.
Apologizing almost with tears in his eyes that something broke down. They don't know what, but oh my God, we are so sorry, and we're pulling everything off the shelf.
And safety first, yeah.
Right, because they understood their cultural values. They had done everything they could to prevent, and when the moment struck, we saw their culture. And their culture was, we're going to treat our customers like gold. We'll take all the financial hits to make things safe. And right now, I think we can, suggest Boeing doesn't share those same values.
Yeah, it's indicative of what your reaction is publicly of what's going on internally, right?
Well, I spent almost 20 years behind those scenes.
Right.
And what I can tell you is going on is that the lawyers are screaming bloody murder about the consequences. Yet, a friend of mine who is a counsel pointed me to a paper, and it was my first eye-opener. It was talking about divorce and lawsuits, and that lawsuits or the divorce proceedings that were like just the most crazy, horrible ones always had something in common, which was the parties involved didn't say sorry.
Interesting.
That it was about retribution. The same thing is going to be true for Boeing, because they didn't apologize, because they're not doing all of the right things. They're not going beyond what they have to do. There is a litany of airline companies around the world and the families of those who perished who are going to go after them for everything they can get because Boeing didn't show that it had class and a heart.
Well, of course. And I mean,
It's
I
just
think,
human nature.
and it's funny because for some reason, when it comes to PR and crises of this level, organizations seem to think that by pointing the finger or trying to deflect blame or anything of that sort is going to help preserve what they, oh no. If you don't take accountability immediately, whether or not you were responsible, it doesn't matter. It's your face and your name. I wrote an article about this a few years ago. It doesn't matter who made the mistake or how the mistake happened. You own up to it, you take accountability for it, and you fix it and move on. People respect that more.
And one of the things that I stress both to my teenage son, but I try to live by example, is that maybe not in a crisis, but where somebody feels wronged, you can apologize for having caused them to feel wronged. I may not think I did anything incorrect.
Sure.
But I do feel genuine remorse that they're upset.
Sure.
And there's immense value in having the self-assurance and the self-confidence to be able to utter words like, we're sorry, I'm sorry, let me make it up to you. Like there's something to be said about that. And when I see individuals on relationships, one-to-one or one to teams, or when I see companies facing the customers in the world, and they don't have what it takes to actually do the right thing that way, that tells me that they have a culture of fear at work.
Yeah.
And that's part of why the crisis happened. And I'm willing to bet that there's going to be another one.
Fair enough. Well, I think that we've covered the subject from a few different angles at the moment. I love the examples that you use because I think everyone's pretty aware of what's going on. So you can sort of take that and learn from it what you will. But as a resilient culture, just remember it's how you act during that crisis and what you do after it that matters. Right?
Absolutely.
Right. Thanks so much for another great chat, Kirby. As always, everybody, if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and anywhere else you happen to be seeing this, you can always reach out to us via email. Just go over to gystmethod.ca. That's all for now.